Hi, I'm Tony Williams, and this is Brooklyn Savvy. Hi, I'm Tony Williams, and welcome to Brooklyn Savvy. We're here with Ella Weiss. Now, Ella is the president of the Brooklyn Arts Council. You are no stranger to anyone on this panel, and probably not most of our viewers. But anyway, we're going to be talking a lot about the Arts Council, but before we get started, let's introduce our co-hosts. I have Lisa Bing and Daniela Romano. Thank you, ladies, for joining us. So, Ella, talk to us about the Brooklyn Arts Council. What is the Brooklyn Arts Council?
Well, the Brooklyn Arts Council is an organization that services all artists in all disciplines and arts organizations as well, all over the borough of Brooklyn. I mean, that's the short of it.
Right.
There's an arts council in every county in the state of New York, and so we are it for Brooklyn.
Right.
All of it. We do a lot of different things, and we were incorporated and started in 1966, so we've been around a long time and have seen many changes in the borough and in the arts scene. We are very excited about what's happening now, and we try to find things to do to support the artists.
Sure. So your mission is basically to support Brooklyn artists, and you're talking about doing that for all kinds of disciplines in the art.
So music, theater, dance,
choreography, composers, writers,
painters,
sculptors, any art form from A to Z. And we really try to find different ways of providing services. Sometimes something is good. Grants are good for everybody,
right?
Organizations and individuals. But on the other hand, there are some things we do that are just for one genre.
Right.
The totality of it is to try to find a way to be the matchmaker and provide opportunities for artists and arts organizations. And we can do that where they wouldn't find those opportunities on their own. Right. So we do lots of different things.
What are those opportunities?
Well, we have a grant program. And we gave out recently over 200 grants and over $375,000.
Wow. And this was to individuals
and organizations. Yeah, both.
Okay.
Both. We have a number of different grant programs. We have one funded by the New York State Council on the Arts, one funded by the Department of Cultural Affairs of the city, one funded by J.P. Morgan Chase, and one was funded by Rockefeller. And so combined, that was the pool of money. It's a peer panel process. I don't have a penny, unfortunately. Somebody calls and says, I have a desperate need. I don't have it. But through the panel process, grants are awarded. So it's very transparent. Once a year, our cycle opens. It opens in August, and the applications are due the end of September. So that's one way of helping any discipline. Another thing we might do is hire artists. We probably hire over 300 artists a year.
To do
lots of things. We work in senior centers. So we're in over 20 senior centers this year. We're in over 50 schools this year. Wow. And again, in every discipline. So there might be a videographer working in one school, and there might be a literary person working and doing some writing skills.
For that, though, when you have these
well, that's interesting.
Yeah,
right. Now, that's the piece of us being somewhat the matchmaker. That's what I call us. We find those opportunities. In some cases, the school pays. But unfortunately, that money has just disappeared.
And that is really unfortunate.
It's tragic.
It's a tragic thing. It is just devastating.
It just seems rather short-sighted because there's so many studies that show that strong arts programs result in good STEM programs, good math and science programs. And
cultivating creativity.
Right.
Dance is science and math. Mosaics, which we often do mosaics in schools, that's math and teamwork and cooperation. And it's a way for students to all have an opportunity to showcase themselves. They don't have to be the brightest, they don't have to read the best, but they can all do well in these arenas.
I've always found that, if you go to Europe, Paris, for instance, there's a real appreciation for artists. I don't think that we have the same appreciation in this country. What do you think about that?
I think it's probably true. I think we're getting a little better in some ways and not so good in others.
Why do you suppose that? I mean, what's driving that?
Sometimes it's necessity. There are only so many places that the money can be put.
Right.
And there are a tremendous number of needs in our society, in our country today. We need housing, we need
Pictures is
jobs.
just not one of them.
We have a tremendous poverty program. People are hungry.
That's true. Right.
So one has to balance all of those needs with the arts. And I think that there have been times in our society when art has been more valued without it costing a lot. But sometimes it's not, and we're working hard to tip that so that the process of the creativity and that creative spirit is really enhanced and allowed to flourish in our borough.
And the irony, almost, it seems, is that Brooklyn has become a hot art scene. So what do you think the tipping point was there? I mean,
it's interesting. I think there are a number of factors. Brooklyn has always been, at least from my perspective, I've lived here all my life, so I'm Brooklyn through and through. Brooklyn's always, I have found, a very welcoming place to new people. And we have accommodated many different peoples from different places over the many years in the 20s and the 30s, the 40s and the 50s, et cetera. And that history lesson I know you all know, so I don't have to go into that. But with that, when art started to become a major factor in Manhattan, not New York City, mind you, Manhattan, okay, because we're in New York City, right? So in Manhattan, the artists got priced out fairly quickly. They would go into Soho, they'd create a new neighborhood, and they'd get priced out. And they came to Brooklyn. Now, I believe they came on the subways, mainly. They followed transportation routes.
As most immigrant groups do, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
So Williamsburg,
so they're migrating. They're
that's
migrating.
it.
Right.
Williamsburg, which is known now as an art nexus, is right on the train, a stop or two out of Manhattan. Red Hook is a little bit of an aberration because that's transportation challenged. But when you look at Dumbo, when you look at Greenpoint, you look at the various neighborhoods.
Gowanus to a degree? Would you consider Gowanus?
Well, there's a train. There's a train. There's a train now. So I think that the tipping was the realization that there was a welcoming place here. And when artists get into a neighborhood, it changes the neighborhood. Artists create community. They create life.
How do they create community?
I think artists are generally outgoing and respectful. I think they create community because they're willing to live in places sometimes that other people aren't.
See that. I can certainly see that.
So they're pioneers in many ways, and they're able to, they connect with each other. It doesn't matter the art form, but they find each other in many ways. And so
they're creative, they can take something and they can take nothing and make it into something.
And they take neighborhoods and make them into something. And unfortunately what happens is then they get priced out of the neighborhood. So Williamsburg is now expensive for many of the artists. They went to Bushwick. Now it's East Bushwick.
So a pressing need for artists right now would be housing.
And live workspace.
Now how do you make that, how does a borough or a city create that for artists?
Not easily.
Right, because
and I would even add to that, does the city create that, or do the artists create it by their own finding these little nooks and crannies in a city that are undiscovered?
I think the artists do create it in that way. They can't create affordable housing.
No,
They can't create low-income housing.
Cannot.
And artists have a challenge because much of their income is not on a tax return. So when they go to apply for affordable housing, they, quote, don't have all the paper they need. So that's a challenge for them. I think that by moving, they've moved where the subways are, more than the buses. And we mapped, Brooklyn Arts Council has a fairly interesting website. I think it's really great. We've gotten a lot of comments on it and compliments. And we have 2 searchable databases that you could all use. One is a directory of arts organizations.
Is that the registry?
No, directory. Directory of arts organizations, over 800 organizations in the borough of Brooklyn.
Now, I wonder where these are sometimes.
Can you imagine?
I know a good 200, but that other 600.
Over 800.
Who are these? Right.
Over 800. All over the borough. Then there are individual artists, and we have an artist registry. And these are all free services that we provide. So if you want to find a chorus or if you want to find a sculptor, you can go online for either a group or an individual artist, and the registry has over 6,000 artists on it, which is not by far all the artists yet. We have a lot of work to do, and we work hard at that. Now, I mapped them, and we did maps in '07, and we looked at the registry numbers, and we mapped where they were.
Right.
And then we did 2011. You can see the spines of the subways,
Right.
and that's where the density of the artists began to migrate down
Right.
into the middle and southern parts.
So we understand maybe a little bit of how artists cluster together. Are there any organizations or institutions that encourage the growth of artists in their community, or sort of public arts efforts where there's perhaps governmental or even corporate support for artists in the community? Like, I like your City Walls project. About
thank you.
recognizing construction projects and giving
Yes,
artists an
and we
opportunity.
did that with the Metrotech bid.
Let's talk a little bit about what that is. Perhaps
Yes.
our viewers don't know what City Walls is.
It was a mural project on construction fences in Metrotech.
Yeah, that's nifty.
Very nifty. But for me and for us, it's the way in which we do it. There are other organizations or other ways you can get a mural up on a construction fence, and you see them on Jersey barriers and other places. But when we do that, we do a call. So it goes out to over 6,000 artists on the registry. It goes out to all the arts organizations and anybody else that gets our blasts.
Mm-hmm.
And it says, we're looking for proposals. These are the specs, etc. And then we can allow lots and lots of people to have input.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you've seen those city walls. They're not quite murals, they're art. They're really very intricate. They have a lot to say, and they have lasted a couple of years, and they're still fresh and vibrant. So we feel our process of reaching out and having a transparent call is very important. We have done other things like that. There's a building in Williamsburg, and we did a large project in the lobby of a new building, 184 Kent.
Yeah.
And there's a hotel called Hotel 718 that has 80 pieces of art from our artists.
You know what, though?
Businesses really
You know-
turn to you.
They come to
Right.
us, yeah.
Excellent. You know what? We're going to have to break, but we will be right back. Brooklyn Savvy is a show of women talking about issues that are important to women. And that's why I have a panel of women that I think reflect the thoughts and feelings of everyday women living in Brooklyn. Women want to know how to work better together and then how to lead better. I did one show on how women compete in the workplace, and I thought that was highly successful because we had to look at where we're weak, where we're strong. I was born a fighter. You know, and that's possibly what you see. But I was not born secure. I was bashful, afraid to speak up, and I just said, you know something, you've got to get away from this. So what I would say to young women today is to say yes to things that you're afraid of, and say yes to those things that you may be insecure about, because you'll get through it, you'll learn, and you'll get better. That's my belief. We're back. Okay, Lisa, you had a point?
So you talked about City Walls, and I know you did a program recently, the Black Brooklyn Renaissance. Can you tell us a little bit about that program and how it was different?
One of the things that's unique about the Brooklyn Arts Council is that we feel very strongly that there are communities that are underserved and under-recognized. One of the ways in which we work with them is through folk arts or the traditional arts. The person who works for us doing that is extremely creative, and she's just, I think, a genius.
You can say her name, Kay Turner.
Dr. Kay Turner.
Give Kay Turner a shout out.
Now, you know, when Kay Turner comes in my office and says, I have an idea, I sit down and I know I'm in for a ride. That's going to be fabulous. It's fabulous. So one of her ideas was Black Brooklyn Renaissance. And she said to me, you know, she said, the African American community has contributed so much to the arts in this borough, not just recently, but over a long, long period of time. So she did this project, Black Brooklyn Renaissance, and looked at the arts for 50 years. In all communities in the borough, visual arts, performing arts, symposia, workshops. There are always educational parts of what Kay Turner does. She's a professor, so there are always panelists and panels. It's just phenomenal. As a result of this year-long program, we produced an archive. 73 DVDs is just the Black Brooklyn Renaissance Archive. It's on the Schomburg. It's the New York Public Library. It's the Library of Congress. It's at Brooklyn College, Medgar Evers. and I will probably have forgotten somebody.
What's on these DVDs? I mean,
Every performance,
Right.
every panel, and 100 interviews with artists
Let's talk about some
individually.
of those interviews. What was that you
Well,
were trying to get from the interviews? What were you learning?
What she got, because she knows how to just sit and talk, was their background, where they got to their art, how they came to it. Some of them come to it culturally from their heritage. Others come from it because they're artistic people, like anybody would be. And they also talked about people like Ted Gunn, who's an artist
he's
in his
phenomenal.
80s,
Right,
was on the
yes.
Bach board for many, many years. Otto Niels, Emmett Wigglesworth. I mean, these are iconic artists in the borough. And then current artists. Current artists.
Right.
She really finds a way to connect and create these programs that are so rich that it served and your community.
Now,
I
she
hope.
also did something called Woman. Did she do Woman Up Front as well?
She
Talk
did
to us
something
a little bit about that
called
program.
Half the Sky. Half the Sky is a program around the old Chinese proverb, women hold up half the sky.
Well,
you
isn't
see
that
that?
the truth?
Now, we think...
instances, we hold up the entire sky.
or at least more than
That's a whole
half.
nother conversation.
More than half, I'd like to say.
Yes, right,
Exactly
way
right.
more,
exactly.
way more.
But leaving that as it may, yes, that's right, absolutely. Again, Kay came in, and she said, how many women drummers have you seen? Steel Pan. How many, although the young people, there are some, how many bands are all women or band leaders are women? So she went into the performing arts for this one. Not visual arts, and again created a program called Half the Sky. And it's 6 weeks worth, 15 programs, including again the educational components. And when you come to one of our events, you also have the opportunity to hear Kay talk about it. And she introduces it in a way that you not only have the entertainment, you also get a little bit of education, which is so important for people to know. We need to know about each other. We need to know where we came from, we need to know where we're going, and we need to be able to explore the richness that everybody has to offer.
Right, because that's what creates community.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. What are you going to say?
We talked about the arts serving underserved communities. What really is the role of the arts in economic development?
Well, there are many statistics, and I won't bore you with numbers, but there are statistics.
ahead.
No. There are lots of statistics that in New York City, the arts and culture industry is one of the biggest economic engines that we have, and it is true in Brooklyn. When I talk about over 800 arts organizations and all these artists, where do people go after performance or before performance? To a restaurant, to a cafe?
Right. If one's available, that's exactly what you
What do people need to buy to do art? They have to go to local stores and hardware stores and art supplies and all the rest. What about costuming? What about the dry cleaners? What about the car services? What about the transportation system? These are all ancillary results, and it's sort of mushrooms. So when you have arts, people come to a neighborhood that they might not have come to otherwise, and they support local business.
Makes it 24/7 sometimes too.
Absolutely.
Doesn't it?
But it also makes it an area, when we started by talking about community, it makes it an area that people want to gather and be a part of. Because if there's nothing there,
Right.
Well, and New York is such a center for graduates in design, and so the design field is absolutely reliant on proximity to art and performance. And
Yeah, I think also about jazz and music. What role does the Arts Council play when it comes to music? Because that's really hot. When I think of Fort Greene, I can almost hear music when I walk down the street.
Well,
I am hearing music.
Yes,
but
exactly.
Randy Weston was part of Black Brooklyn Renaissance. You can't get more iconic than that. He also was interviewed when you talk about the interviews. So all of that is on these DVDs, the archives. Jazz is very big now, and we have many jazz artists that we present and work with. One of the things we do is, again, the matchmaker. We can find a school that might have some money or a program that may have some funding. There's a Cultural After-School Adventures program in the city of New York. There are 5 schools that each council person can pick in their district. And then an arts provider is paired in a number of different ways. In Brooklyn, there are 80 sites. We have 24 from the Brooklyn Arts Council. Now, why? Because we give them a choice. They can have dance, they can have a mural, they can have theater, they can have a social studies curriculum. 3rd grade is Africa and Asia. And we've done a lot of work with the 3rd grade this year in a number of schools, combining the cultural aspects of the studies in Africa that they're doing and about Asia, bringing in artists from those realms. doing that means we're giving artists work.
Right.
We're employing them.
Yeah.
We put over $1 million a year into the hands of artists. We're a tiny organization. Over $1 million comes from us because we can be the match. Yeah.
Now, a question that I have though too is, all right, those are the artists that you get a chance to touch. There's often these artists that feel exploited. You know, when I talk to artists, it's like they're starving, and you know, how do you help artists develop, those artists that need it, develop the business savvy skills to actually get their art out there, the more entrepreneurship aspects? How do you make that happen?
We do professional development. We've been doing it for years and years. Free seminars where we've taught everything from how do you prepare your visual art for a portfolio presentation to pitch yourself. How do you write your 60-second elevator speech, as they call it?
You help artists write pitches. Huh?
Absolutely. How do you do marketing? Social media. Oh my goodness. I mean, I don't even understand half of it because I'm sort of a dinosaur. But
I know that
we've had things on social media. How they can use social media, and we also use social media. We tweet. We Facebook. We put lots of things out there for artists.
So here's this sort of tension between, you know, the artists. This is this hot area. It's expensive. They're moving. I know there was some articles recently about the danger of artists leaving New York City and what have you. So what's being done to make sure they're able to live here? Because
you're right. They're leaving. They're going to Detroit. They're going to Pittsburgh, to Philly, to Berlin.
I can see Pittsburgh.
You know,
Brooklyn.
I
can see Pittsburgh.
They need it. Yes. And I would never be quoted saying, I won't be quoted saying anything bad about any other place. I know, obviously, but Brooklyn's the best. Brooklyn's the best. Brooklyn's the best. And what we try to do to keep them is get them these opportunities, because we can apply for certain grants that individuals or small organizations can't. So we spend a lot of time. If we get a grant, it's really for our constituents, not for us. Right. So we have a grant from the New York Community Trust to do work in schools. That's the Africa, Asia curriculum, social studies stuff that I mentioned. Artists are working, and the best we can do is give them skills and give them employment and opportunities. That's really, I can't create housing for them. But what we'd like to, love to, but what we can do is try to get more and more of them to be part of the Bach family on our website, on our registry and directory, so that we can help them when we can get to them.
So how do you stay relevant? You talked about Kay Turner, but you know, this art scene has been very organic. So how do you make sure that you stay in touch? How do you keep your fingers on the pulse?
The Bach staff is incredible. They're strong, they're passionate, and committed. And everybody's out there.
And it's not a large staff.
No, it's not a large staff. They are so overwhelmed. But they're out there. They're people because some of them are artists, some of them are not. But even if they're not an artist, I'm not an artist, but they're passionate about art.
Passion is important about
anything. So they're out in the scene.
Right.
And we do a lot, even though it's not a project, just being out there and connecting with people and letting them know about us. And letting them know what we can do for them. We've participated in town halls that maybe an elected official may plan and then host, and then we'll be there and be able to talk to people. There's a loft law now where loft tenants will have an opportunity to make their living arrangements legal. So we've been involved in information, in education.
Well, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned education and you're educating the artists, and we talked about the education in the schools. You know, can you talk more about what you're doing to help keep those programs?
Well, one of the things we've done is we've changed the model a little bit. It used to be arts for art's sake. 15, 20 years ago, art in the schools was arts for art's sake, which is really very important. But it doesn't fly in this economic climate. So now we're much more curriculum-based, such as the social studies I mentioned. Or a mosaic project is geared into the math. We can take an artist and an art project. We can do a quilt, as an example. Third grade did a quilt of the biography of Harriet Tubman. A senior citizen center did a quilt with the same artist, a memory quilt. And each senior did a square.
that's clever.
So
Right.
each third grade child did a square of a piece of her life that they picked.
Right.
And a memory. Well, the seniors came in with all their scraps, and when I mentioned this, somebody said, "Oh, seniors are arthritic; they can't." No, they know how to sew better than we do.
Right.
Although I'm a senior, so I guess I shouldn't say that, you know.
You might not be. We'll keep that towards- No, I'm not a senior.
I'm a senior. I admit it.
Right.
But so the projects that we do, we really try to keep relevant.
Yes.
And we change the model somewhat so that we really can be important to and be added value to what the schools need today.
Well, I think that's a really great place to end, unfortunately. But thank you so
Thank you for
much. I mean,
coming.
this was just wonderful. You've been informing us about the arts, and you're doing a great job out there for Brooklyn. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lisa and Daniela, thank you as well. And we will see you next time on Brooklyn Savvy. Was that?